So our sermon theme for this Lenten season is gaining a clearer perception of God. And in our first lesson for today from Genesis, we hear the story of how God appeared to Abram and says to Abram, "I am El Shaddai. Walk with me and be trustworthy." Now, remember that Abram and Sarai are 190 years old, respectively. And yet they have faith that God's promise that they will be the parents of many descendants and of many nations, even though Sarai is childless at this age, they trust that if God says it, it surely must be. It's actually humanly impossible, this plan that Abram and Sarai would be the parents of anybody at this point in time. But they adopt God's agenda. It becomes their agenda. And they actually cooperate with God. And that's our thought for the day, that as we are gaining a clearer perception of God, we're looking at a God who expects us to cooperate. Part of our having faith in God is actually putting our faith in action and cooperating with God and offering ourselves and saying, "Here we are, God, how are you going to use us to accomplish what you want to accomplish in this world?" It's exactly what Abraham and Sarah did. So for some time here at Coming First United Methodist Church, we've tried to get getting by on that which people choose to give. And as we've operated in this manner, we've seen over the years a decreasing of giving while our costs continue to increase. And that has necessitated our cutting of ministry. That has meant less staff members. And it's meant that there's not even been a conversation in the last 6 or 7 years about giving our staff even a COLA raise. It has meant that maintenance around our campus has been deferred, and that repairs and replacements are just piling up. It's meant less offering of important ministries like nursery care during meetings or during choir rehearsals. We've been shooting ourselves in the foot, in a way, by doing less and less because we had less and less money to do anything with. It also is just the buzzkill of every idea. Somebody has a great idea for ministry, and the answer is, that is a wonderful idea. We just don't have the money to do it. Next. So finances have driven our agenda. And what we're attempting and trying to do is to, instead of cooperating less and less with God, to begin to cooperate more and more with God and to try to say, "So God, what is your vision? What is your agenda for us? What do you really want us to be doing as Coming First United Methodist Church?" And then to do like Abraham and Sarah, to adopt God's agenda as our agenda and trust God that God can do this and will do this with us. So we're trying to change that. We want to have the faith that cooperates with God, that helps us to truly not just to survive, but to thrive at being the congregation that God wants us to be. In the gospel reading for today, we see this perception of God as well as a God who expects us to walk with him and to cooperate with God. Jesus lays out God's agenda, says to the disciples, "Here's what you can expect. This is what's going to happen." And Peter doesn't like the agenda at all. But then Jesus rebukes Peter, saying, "You're not thinking God's thoughts, you're thinking human thoughts." To which Jesus then turns to the crowd and says to them, "All who want to come after me must say no to themselves, must take up their cross and follow me." For all who want to save their lives will lose them, and all who lose their lives because of me and because of the good news will save them. So in other words, to walk with God is the expectation to follow Jesus. And to do that, we have to deny ourselves, and at times we have to deny our own understanding of things, our own desire for things, and our own agenda. If we lose our agenda, we will find life in God's agenda. But if we insist on keeping our agenda as the priority, then Jesus warns us we will lose the very purpose for which we have life, which is to be instruments of God for God's glory and purpose. For us to try to hear God's agenda for Coming First United Methodist Church, I've asked the staff and the ministry teams and the administrative committees to think through what would it really look like and what is really needed to be done if we are to become a church that is thriving, not in the opinion of anyone except but in the eyes of God, that God would see Coming First United Methodist Church as a church that is fully cooperative with God and that is thriving. What would it look like if we were being that kind of church that God desires us to be? What would it cost us? So this morning, we want to hear from our church leaders as they share their vision for a thriving church. We're calling this our Thriving Ministry Action Plan, or our Thriving Map. So let us, during this presentation, listen for God's voice and discern God's vision. Let us continue to pray and ask that question that we're asking all of us to pray during this generosity campaign. God, what do you desire to do through the financial resources that you have entrusted to me? This Thriving Ministry Action Plan will, of course, take more than just our finances. It will take our prayers. It will take our showing up and presence. It will take our gifts. It will take our service. It will take our witness. It will take those at a very committed level from all of us. However, it will not be accomplished without our financial support as well. So you now should have a copy of the Thriving Ministry Action Plan in your hand. Does everybody have one? Did we get them up to the choir? No. We need some more ushers. We need some more up here in the choir. Can we get a few copies up here for the choir? So let's walk through this ministry action plan. The hospitality team is asking for $17,700. And Susan Van Velde is the co-captain along with Patrick Webb of the hospitality team, and the Reverend Gia Jones and the Reverend Fede Apicina and our church administrator, director of hospitality, Christy Thompson, relates to this team from the staff. So Susan, would you please tell us about the ministry that we will accomplish together in the area of hospitality and how we will thrive as a congregation if this part of our ministry action plan is funded?
Sure, thank you. I'm Susan Van Velde, and my beloved co-chair, Patrick Webb, is at home recovering. So I'll be the one presenting some of our ideas for the Thriving Ministry Action Plan today. But first, I'd like to introduce my committee. Christy Thompson is a stellar administrative support person. We could not function without her. And if you would please stand when I call your name. Sharon Knowles, in charge of scheduling greeters. Sue Buckaloo. Claudia Baldowski. Saru Harris. Albert and Florence Rabindran. Kathy Thompson. And Nancy Britton, who's also home recovering today. Thank you so much. You can sit down. The goal of the hospitality team is to make all who walk through the doors at Coming First feel welcome so that they can experience God's lavish love. How do we accomplish this goal? Through friendly faces, by offering coffee and snacks every Sunday, through gifts to visitors and new members, and through food, lots and lots of fabulous food. One of the primary functions of our team is to host luncheons on Celebration Sundays, those special days on which we welcome into our fellowship new members. We often have upwards of 200 guests attending these luncheons, which are now occurring about 4 times a year. We not only serve lunch, but we offer games and prizes as well. With a thriving budget, we're hoping to initiate Bring a Friend Sundays, which would, of course, be followed by a luncheon. A thriving budget would also allow our team to work on plans to celebrate everyone who volunteers here by hosting an appreciation luncheon. We would like to begin to serve breakfast to new members on the first Sunday of Methodism 101. What better way for them to meet the pastors and staff than over a plate of pancakes or bacon and eggs? And wouldn't it be great if we could have some of these events catered instead of always relying on you to give food contributions? A thriving budget would allow us to do this. I recently heard these words in a song by the Quiet Beatle, George Harrison. He wrote, "But it's going to take money, a whole lot of spending money. It's going to take plenty of money to do it right, child." Well, for the hospitality team, a whole lot of money looks like $17,700 annually. Friends, please help the hospitality team do it right. Be generous. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Our worship team is asking for $94,752, and we're needing a captain, actually, for the worship team. So if you're interested, please come talk with me. Staff who relate to the worship team is John Hutchinson, our Director of Music and Worship and Arts, Matthias Young, our Assistant Director of Worship, Music and Arts, Michael Holbrook, our Director of Production and Technology, Christy Thompson, our Church Administrator, and myself. So John Hutchinson is here this morning. John, please tell us about the ministries that we will accomplish through worship and how we will thrive as a congregation if this part of our ministry action plan is funded.
We are called first and foremost to worship. That is our primary purpose in being a part of the church. So we have chosen over the years to do that as a combination of both volunteer and paid support staff. We bring in orchestra for lessons and carols and for Easter Sunday. We have support singers occasionally for the choir. We have support instrumentalists for the modern worship service, and so on and so forth. We are doing all of that on a shoestring budget at the moment, and we want to make sure that our worship is always the very best it can possibly be, so that when you come and when others come as guests, they will experience the most glorious worship they can possibly experience anywhere.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Our faith development team is asking for $104,811, and Ann Talent and Lynn Pugh are the co-captains of our faith development team, and the staff who relate to the faith development team is the Reverend Gia Jones, Barbara Ledbetter, our Safe Sanctuary Coordinator, Anita C., our Director of Nursery Ministries, Betty Holloman, our Assistant Director of Children's Ministries, Sherry Perkins, our Director of Children's Ministries, and Nate Bramwell, our Director of Student Ministries. So Jennifer Hanks, who is also a member of the Faith Development Team, would you please tell us about the ministries that we will accomplish in faith development and how we will thrive as a congregation as we fund this area of our ministry action plan?
Sure. So faith development exists to equip and enliven us all for the ministries that this church supports by deepening our faith and our commitment to serving God and being disciples of Jesus. I think of this like John was talking about worship. This is deepening our roots beyond worship and getting into things like our funding currently goes to supplying the upper room devotionals to the congregation. We support the materials for women's and men's Bible studies, discipleship studies. We have the desire to purchase curriculum for at least 2 congregational studies this year. So you may remember the Advent study last year. But in order to really thrive for 2024, we're also looking for funding to boost our children and our youth ministries with the goal of attracting and retaining families into this church. We want to build greater connection amongst our adult and our children and youth ministries to grow all areas of faith development across the whole family, from our kids to our grandparents. For the children's ministry in particular, these funds would support events and curriculum to excite and ignite our kids to be bold in their faith. For the youth, we want to be able to purchase structured curriculum that focuses on leadership and offer events that really provide community building for our teens. So I'm a mom of a kid and a youth, and I know firsthand how many different influences work against our faith development of our children and how many directions they get pulled that are not the church. But I've also been blessed to see my own children poured into by the adults of this congregation who support and uplift them in being disciples of Jesus. Our children and our youth really take what they learn from us into the community and their interactions with others their age. So I'm really excited to think of how we could thrive and plant those seeds, not just here, but outside of here, if we were able to grow our budget of faith development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. As you see all these kids down here, and I don't know if you know it or not, but up here in the top corner in the balcony, our youth are up there as they are every Sunday, and we are glad they're here too. Thank you, Jennifer. Our generosity team is asking for $13,000, and Robert and Janet Scott are the co-captains. Barbara Ledbetter, our executive administrative assistant, John Hutchison, our interim director of communications, and Sherry Perkins, the director of children's ministry, and Nate Bramlett, the director of student ministries, relate to this team from the staff. And Robert, would you please tell us about the ministries that we will accomplish together through generosity, and how we will be a thriving congregation if this part of our ministry action plan is funded?
Thank you. First and foremost, it takes money to make money. And with the funds that are generated through your generosity, we can then fund all of the programs that you have heard about and will continue to hear about. I think one of the biggest things that the generosity can do is to benefit each and every one of you in the congregation. So if you're a member of the church, if you're a visitor, if you're here just because, just raise your hand. Would you do that for me, please? Thank you. Each of you is the benefactor of everything that the generosity team will do. So on behalf of the generosity team, members of which are scattered throughout the congregation, I say thank you, and you'll be hearing more about our generosity campaign going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Our congregational care team is asking for $5,000. They're looking. We're actually looking for a captain of the congregational care team. So if you're interested, if you'd like to hear more about that, please let me know. The Reverend Gia Jones relates to this team from the staff, and she's asked Harold Knowles to talk with us this morning about the congregational care team and their request. So Harold, please tell us about the ministries that we could accomplish together through congregational care and be a thriving congregation if we fund this area of our ministry action plan.
Pastor Matt, I think that's great. I think we ought to add a few zeros to that number.
Add a few zeros to that
ones that were up here. But congregational care is very important, and I understand we've built in some budget to train more Stephen ministries because we really need more Stephen ministries. We only have 4 official ones right now left in our congregation that's taking care of 2,000 people. So we do need that help in that sense. But it goes beyond just congregational care. Once you become members of our church, we want to make sure that you get plugged into a small ministry. John Wesley believed in classes, and we have those for adult Sunday schools. We have Bible studies all year round. We also want to get involved in shut-in communion once a month to the people that cannot make it down here, that might be watching us online, and we're not affording them that opportunity for communion each month. So we want to do that as well. We also are talking about hospitals calls. We're talking about nursing home calls and assisted living calls for anybody that's shut in and cannot make our services. We want to get out there and see them as a congregational care team. I think that about covers it, Pastor Matt.
Well, thank you.
Gia's got something?
Thank you, Harold. Appreciate that so much.
God bless you.
Our missions and service team is asking for $151,010, and Krista O'Neill is the captain of the missions and service team. Reverend Gia Jones, Reverend Fede Apicina, Sherry Perkins, our director of outreach, and Barbara Ledbetter, our food pantry director, relate to this team from the staff. So Krista, please tell us this morning what ministries we could accomplish together through missions and service and be a thriving congregation if we fund this area of our ministry action plan.
Okay. If I may, first I would like to have the members of our team to stand right where you are in the congregation. Hopefully. Come on, stand up. Yay. Thank you very much. To answer your question, the Missions and Services team would thrive by focusing our attention this year and our attention and time toward the homeless individuals, families, and children that live among us in Forsyth County. We have a responsibility as a congregation to be caring and compassionate, to provide support through our resources with which we have been so very blessed. So we would like to put our emphasis on being a connectional church, to partner with other United Methodist churches so we can collectively provide service to the homeless population around us. Currently, there are over 900 children registered in our school system that are homeless in Forsyth County. That's over 900 in our county. Your support will make a difference in those kids' lives. Through your generous support to this ministry, we can provide hot meals, blankets, toiletries, and other aid and comfort to homeless children and their families in our community. By becoming a connectional church and joining in ministry with others, we can seek to support our brothers and sisters who are in need. We also want to continue to support, develop, and grow our existing ministries, including the food pantry and Backpacks of Love. And finally, we would like to support our youth. Our team will provide support and encouragement to our youth in their missional experiences. We are focused on providing the congregation with opportunities to embrace and inspire our youth as they engage in practical ways to be missional.
Thank you, Krista. Appreciate that so
welcome.
much. $103,360 is being asked for operation of the church office, including marketing and communication. And John Hutchison, our interim director of communications, will share with us about this ministry and how funding this part of our ministry action plan will help us be a thriving congregation.
Just in the last 2 months, Coming First United Methodist Church has been named by the Chamber of Commerce as the most active faith-based organization in the county in terms of volunteer hours for the Martin Luther King Week. Coming First United Methodist Church has been named by the Forsyth County News as the best of Forsyth 2024. And this coming week, we will have yet another award to announce to you as the time approaches. So we are recognized. We are known by some. We would like to be known by all. We don't want to remain the best kept secret in Forsyth County. We'd like to be a household name. Right now, we have no budget for communications, and we do the best we can. But we would love to be able to put word out through billboards, through print advertising, through Facebook boosts, all of those kinds of things to let everyone know we're here. We're here for you, and we're here for this community.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Well, the Committee on Finance is asking for $33,922. Dana Letchworth is our Committee on Finance chair, and Susan Payne is our financial administrator that relates to this committee from the staff. Susan's here this morning, and Susan, please tell us the ministries that we will accomplish together through finance and how we can be a thriving ministry, thriving congregation as we fund this part of our ministry action plan.
While the Committee on Finance portion of the Ministry Action Plan is undoubtedly not the most glamorous and exciting portion in comparison to the other areas of ministry at Coming First, it is a vital part to ensuring that we keep our church healthy and thriving. We must create and implement financial policies and procedures that are both biblically sound and can support the goals and responsibilities of the church's mission. As such, an annual independent audit of the church's financial statements, accounts, and internal controls is necessary to not only ensure compliance, but also provide assurance to our congregation, advice and insights that direct our faithful use of the resources with which God has blessed us. Additionally, it's important to make giving through multiple avenues, which bears a cost, as convenient as possible in our modern world so that people can give generously, showing their love for God and love for others through the ministries that we do. Part of being able to accomplish our goals is being able to deploy the resources entrusted to us for the kingdom in ways that will be most effective. The cost in the finance portion in the Ministry Action Plan are the cost of ensuring we continue to be the best stewards of what people have given to God through the church. This way, we assure all who are being faithful to giving that what they give will go to the purposes designated. Through spreading the word of God and managing our finances, we can continue to support the ministries here at Coming First and build a church that serves this congregation and community for years to come. At this time, I would like to invite all that are part of the Finance Committee or who have been in the last couple of years to please stand at this time so that we can recognize you for the vital part you play in overseeing the church's finances.
Thank you, Susan. We are most appreciative of Susan. She really has straightened us out and keeps us going financially, and thank you for your hard work, Susan. Staff Parish Relations Committee is asking for $1,105,257. Jerry Harris is the chair of the Staff Parish Relations Committee. And Jerry, please tell us about the ministries that we will accomplish together in Staff Parish Relations and how we can thrive as a congregation if we fund this part of our Ministry Action Plan.
Thank you, Pastor. I'd like for the SPRC members to please stand up. As we all know, the staff is the moving machine for this church. And with this budget, we will be able to help and hire new people, qualified people. And as we are in a bad need right now for those who need to know about our church, we will need a director for communications, and this will help us hire that person.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And can all of our staff stand up and be recognized right now? Thank you. Last but not least at all, the Board of Trustees is asking for $479,780. Gary Pearson is our chair of the Board of Trustees. Christy Thompson is our church administrator that relates to this team from the staff. Gary, please tell us about the Board of Trustees and how we can use funding in the area of business and facilities to be a thriving congregation.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Since I'm last, I'm going to cut my talk down from an hour just to 30 minutes, so just relax. But the role of, first let me say the Board of Trustees, there's 9 members, and I see a few of them here today, maybe all of them. Would you please stand so we could recognize you? And really the goal of the trustees is just maintain the facilities and pay the bills so we have a church and facilities that can really carry out the important missions of this church. And having a well-maintained, pleasing environment for people to come on the sanctuary on Sunday or just to use the church 7 days of the week is very, very important. And if you realize this building here was built in 2001, 20 years plus. The Family Life Center, the other facilities are 35 years old. So it takes a lot just to maintain those and to keep going. And in the past, we've had reserves we'd like to use for other things. So it's important that we be generous to maintain this wonderful facility that we have. In the last few years, we've tried to make some progress. The front was repaired. We currently have the roof is under contract that they're going to start tomorrow morning, and we'll do. Blow up that and again, thank you for your generosity. That wouldn't have happened without your support in a very timely manner, and that will be the roofs on all the facilities, and we hope we'll have it done by Easter and have a real celebration in doing that. And as far as the coming year, there's some other things we'd like to do. We'd like to improve the landscaping around the building, especially the front of the building where the outside area was reconstructed last year. We've got some lighting issues. There's some other mechanical issues that when you get to this age need to be dealt with. So I look for your continued generosity. Also, we hope to this coming year to have at least one, maybe 2 work days like we had last year to get out and fellowship with one another, but also get out and do some things to improve the church. So it's just important that you have a nice facility to carry on the missions, and this facility on the hill in Forsyth County is well known. So let's try to keep it in that beautiful condition with your generosity. So thank you again for everything you've given.
Thank you, Gary. So the total being asked and requested from all the areas of the church so that we can be a thriving congregation that is fully cooperative with God is $2,108,592. Wow. That sounds like a lot, because that is a lot. However, this is what we feel as the church leadership that we really need if we're going to thrive as a church and be fully cooperative with God and not just be content to survive. It is nowhere as impossible as was giving birth at the age of 190 years old. God's agenda for us certainly seems to be more than we can do. But what would it say of God if He gave us something that we already knew we could do? That wouldn't take any faith at all. That wouldn't take any relying upon God. This is something that we can do with God's help, but it will take all of us. So between now and March 17th, we're asking every single one of us to make an estimate of giving for 2024. Include what you have already given thus far and what you will give from now until December 31st. And if all you can give, honestly and truly, is $1 a week, then make your estimate of giving for $52 and know that you're doing part to be the church together and for us all doing what God's calling us to do. And remember, you're the church, I'm the church, and we are the church together. There's nobody out there called the church but you and me and us. God is a God who expects us to follow and cooperate. And what is the measure of our lives if our church, my church, your church, our church, doesn't live up to our potential and doesn't have faith in God to go even beyond what we see as our potential, and we don't accomplish what God desires of us? We did an analysis of our giving here at Coming First United Methodist Church, and we found that on average, and of course average means some are doing more, some are doing less. Average is where the more thans and the less thans meet together in the middle. On average, we here at Coming First United Methodist Church give just a little over 2% of our income to God through this congregation. 2%. The good news is that there's room for improvement. In the scriptures, we have the model of tithing, of giving 10% of our household income to God through the church. And the neat thing about God's idea of tithing is that it's a percentage for all. The most financially abled and the least financially abled can do this. Our gifts will not be equal by any means, but our percentage of giving can be. This way, we all get to fully participate. We get to fully cooperate with God, and we get to share in feeling that we have done this together with God's help and with each other, doing our faithful part. So I encourage all of us to intentionally calculate what percentage of your household income are you giving to God through Coming First United Methodist Church. And please know that I, as your pastor, do not ask you to do what I am not doing myself. I assure you, dear friends, that the Stewart household gives more than 10% of our household income to the ministry action plan of Coming First United Methodist Church, and we will continue to do so. So I'm not asking of you something. Well, I guess, there we go. Didn't want to hear that part. I realize that some of us are sacrificing and denying ourselves certain things to tithe their income to God through the church. Thank you. Let us not just give something. And let us not just give from what we have left over after our agendas have been fulfilled. Instead, let us witness to all, and especially to God, our love for the God who loves us so much as we cooperate with God and replace our agendas with God's agendas. And let us find the joy of giving to God through the church, and find the joy of knowing that we are doing this together with God's help, and that God is accomplishing great things through us. And there's more good news. We are already well on our way to funding this Thriving Ministry Action Plan. If we all do just what we did in 2023, we will be well on our way. And maybe that is all you can do, is what you did in 2023. If so, great. Do it with joy and love of God. However, if we all do just what we did in 2023, we will fall short of funding this Thriving Ministry Action Plan, and tough decisions about what doesn't happen will have to be made. And any cut that we make is going to keep us from being as cooperative as we could be with what God really wants of us. Now, I realize that some of us are tired of hearing about the church talk about money. I'm with you. So let's work together to fund this ministry action plan so that we can be a thriving congregation and focus on ministry and not fret over finances. Dear children of God, we are dearly loved by God without condition. God's love of us is never in question. Thus, we never give to earn God's love or to get God to love us. That's already true. How now will we express to God and witness our love of God to others through our giving? Our giving, not the amount, but the percentage, speaks volumes to God who knows our heart. So there's no explanation needed to me or to the church. It's just a conversation we have with God. Because we all know that when we truly love, we truly want to give. When we truly love, we truly want to cooperate with those whom we love. Let us show that to God. I want us to be a thriving and not just a surviving congregation. I want to be a part of a thriving church that is in love with God and is loving God with all that we are. Don't you? Don't you? So let's all join together and just simply pray, God, what do you desire to do through the financial resources that you have entrusted to me? And I know God will hear our prayer and answer our prayer, and God will help us in this God's agenda, our Thriving Ministry Action Plan. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit, amen.